Hello and welcome back to the data analysis tutorial using Pandas, NumPy, Matplotlib and Seaborn, and this is the part 3 of the tutorial series where we take the example of the Titanic Survival Dataset. So without wasting any further time, let's start to code. So now next what I want to see is the distribution of age. So I'll create a histogram plot for this. Let's start coding. So first I want the figure to be large enough, so I'll just copy this part of code and I'll paste it here. Next I'll start writing the histogram function. First I'll mention the data frame, which is data, and hist. Now which column do I want? So I'll write the column, and I want to see the I want to see the age distribution. So I'll mention the column as age, and bins, how broad the distribution will be. So I'm taking a value of 80. You can play around with it, and similarly similar to the previous graphs, I'll be mentioning the plot title. Plot title, I'll write it as age distribution. Plot dot x label will be age, and y label will be count. Okay, so now finally plot dot show, and I'll run this part of the code and I'll see a nice graph. So as you can see, this is a nice graph, but it is not big enough even after mentioning it here. So we need to mention the figure size inside the histogram function. So I do that. I'll copy this here and I'll paste it here, and I'll comment this out, and now I'll run this code once again. So now as you can see, this part of the graph is big enough for us to analyze. So most of the people belong to the age group of between 20 to 30, and there are some very little children, approximately 14 to 15 children who are less than 1 year of age, or maybe 1 year of age, and few of them have almost touched 80. Now there are maybe 1 or 2, but few of them have touched 80. Now I want to see how many people out of these age distributions survived and how many people died. This is similar to the class distribution, and it will look similar to this. So I'll have to just change a few elements from this part of code. So I will copy this same thing, and instead of the class distribution, I'll see the age distribution with respect to survived and death. So I'll copy this same part and make a few changes and I'll see the age distribution with respect to the people survival. So here a class is mentioned. So instead of class here, I'll change it to the column name age, and here 0 means that the person has died, and 1 means that the person has survived. So similarly, instead of p class here, I'll change it to age. Now here the survival is with respect to age, so I'll change this to age, and here it will be age as well. Now since this is a KDE plot, the count will be a normalized count and not the actual count. So I'll run this part of code. So as you can see, this is the distribution of age with respect to survival. So there's something different as well, which I would like to show you. This is just looking like a curve. I can fill it up with some shade here. So what I can do is I can write another argument, which is shade, and I can mention it as true, and you can I'll mention it as true, and you can see how different it looks now. The 0 is the survived, so 0 is the people who died, so the blue curve will be filled with a blue shade. I'll run this part and you will be able to see the difference. Okay, I forgot the comma. I'll run this once again, and yeah, as you can see, this particular curve got filled with a blue shade. Similarly, if you mention a shade here for the survived one, the curve will get filled with orange shade. So I'll run this once again, and as you can see, the orange curve got filled with an orange shade and the blue one with a blue shade. So now next what we will do is, I want to see, I want to see the fair distribution. We saw the age distribution, we saw the class distribution. I want to see the fair distribution. So it will be a similar histogram plot similar to this. So I will just copy this one and I'll paste it there, and I'll just change the column name, and we'll be able to see the fair distribution. So I copied that part and I'll paste it right here. So instead of the column age, I will change the column name from age to fair, since I want the fair distribution, and instead of this 80 here, I'll change to 200. I want the fair distribution to be broad enough, because as we saw, as we will see that some people have paid more than $500. You will see that when I run this part of code. Okay, so as you can see, this is the fair distribution, and as you see, most of the people have paid less than $100 and less than $50. And as we saw earlier, the mean fare, we'll take a look at it once again. The mean fare, the average fare is $32. We calculated this earlier in the tutorial, and some people have paid more than $500. And let's see, I'm just curious how, if people paid $500, these people did these people actually survive the crash? So I'll see if people who have paid more than $500, if they have survived or not. So I'll write a few lines of code to find that out. It is really helpful. I am just curious, I want to see if they survived or not. So survive above 500, the people who paid more than $500, I want to see if they survived or not. So I'll mention the data frame name, data, and the fare, and the fare will be more than $500, greater than $500, and this is one part. The fare should be one condition. The fare should be more than $500, and another condition is that the person should survive. So I want to see if people who paid more than $500 actually survived or not. So now next part will be survived, where the people should survive, where survive has a value of 1, and I want to see the total number of people. So I'll write the sum. I want to see the total number of people who survived, who paid $500 and they survived. So I'll print this out. So survived after paying more than $500, and this is just a small representation, and I'll print the variable survived above 500, and I'll run this part of code. There's a small error. I made a small mistake. Where? Okay, so I found the mistake. The spelling of survived, survived. Now I'll run this part and I'll see. I hope there's no error. So as you can see, 3 people paid above $500 and they survived. So were there total only 3 people? I want to see if I'm still curious. I want to see how many total number of people were there who paid more than $500. So I'll write another part of code which will show me that print data.loc data and the column name which is fair, and the fare is more than $500. Now I'll run this part of code. Okay, instead of writing a print statement here, I'll avoid the print statement, run this once again, and as you can see, okay, so there were only 3 people who paid more than $500. As you can see, $512, and they all survived. All these 3 people survived. Obviously they paid more, so they got a higher class, which is class 1, and they all embarked from the port value C, the category C, which is Sherberg. And now let's I'm satisfied now. I got to know the people who paid more money survived. Now let us just compare age with fair, and instead of some histogram plot or KDEplot, and this graphical representation, we'll take an example of a scatter plot. So let's start. I want a larger figure. Plot dot figure fig size equals, I'll take it as 12 by 8. Now this will give us a slightly bigger figure, and now let's write the scatter function. So plot dot scatter, it is a Matplotlib function, and I want to see the age. I'm comparing age with the fair. So this is the age, which will be the X label, and the fair will be the Y label. So this is the X label, data and fair, this is the Y label or the Y axis values. Now plot dot title, the title will be age with respect to fair, and plot dot x label will be age, and plot dot y label will be fair, and finally plot dot show, and I'll run this part and I'll see a scatter plot. So as you can see, this is a scatter plot, the comparison between age and fair. So 3 people paid more than $500, and you can see that plot here, and 2 people were 35 years of age and one of them was 36 years of age. So you can see 2 scatter plots here, and most of the people, maximum amount of people have paid less than $100, and as you already calculated, the average fare was $32, if I remember properly. So now let's this was a comparison between age and fare. Now let us see how many men survived the disaster and how many women survived the disaster. So now let us just write a few more lines of code in order to explore some more data. First, let's take an example of the men. Male dead, and I'll name it is the variable, and I'll see how many men died. So data frame name, and there will be conditions. The person should be a male and the person should have survived the crash. So the person should be a male, so I'll compare it with male here. And second thing is that the person should be a survivor of it is dead, so the person should not be a survivor. So survived equals 0, and I'll just write it in another bracket here, and I want the sum of everything. I want the sum of these conditions, and now I'll print this out. Men, okay, I forgot this. Men died and male dead. I'll run this part of code and I'll see how many men died in this disaster. So there are total 468 men. There are total of 800 and how many people? Total 809. Out of 891 people, 468 men died out of these people. Oh, that is really a sad thing. Now let's see of the survival of men. How many men survived this disaster? I just copied this part and I'll make a small change here, and I'll show you that. So the male dead, instead of dead, I'll name the variable as survived, and the single small thing that I'll change is from 0 to 1, because I want to the condition is that I'm taking a look at the men, and the man should be a survivor of this disaster. So I'll change this thing, this variable here as well, and instead of died, I changed it to survived. So I'll run this part of code, and okay, I again and again make the same mistake. So REIVED, I run this part, and yeah, so total 109, only 109 men survived the disaster. That is really a sad thing. Now instead of men, I want to check out the same data for the female passengers. So I'll copy the same part of the code, and instead of the male part here, I'll replace the male with female. So I copied this part, I'll paste it down here. So I'll make a few small changes. Instead of male here, I'll write it as female. The sex will be female, and the lady should be dead here. So that is the reason there's a 0 here. And instead of men here, I'll be women here, and instead of male it will be a female, and instead of male here, I change it to female. This one will remain as it is, and instead of your male, I change it to female, and here women survived. So now I'll run this part of code and I'll get the data of the survival data of all the men and the women, and let's run this part. So as you can see, only 81 women died, and 233 women survived. So as I think you guys saw the movie, they were like women and children first. So yeah, that is the reason many women survived and many men died. Okay, so now let's just plot this data on sort of a different sort of a bar chart, a stacked bar graph. So before I write the code, I'll show you how it will look like. So the bar graph that we'll be creating will look something like this. There will be a count. Y-axis will represent the count, and x-axis will represent the gender. So now let us start to code. So there will be a lot of variables that I'll have to load. This is a slightly complicated graph that I'll be creating. So just follow me, and finally after we are done with the graph, I'll explain it to you what exactly it is. So data will consist of the male who died. So I'll just copy the few in order to avoid any mistakes. I'll just copy and paste it. Male died, male, so I've survived, and now F data means female data, and female died and female survived. These are the few arguments that we will use while plotting the data. So now next I will start creating the graph plot dot bar, and it will take a few arguments. there are total of two columns, two bars, as you saw. One was for the male and the other one was for the female. So I will mention 2 here, but there are two bars, so it doesn't take a 2 here. It takes a 2 number of graphs in the form of an NumPy array. So np dot arange and 2, and next argument that it takes is mdata, that is the data which belongs to the men. As we saw, one column was for the male and other was for the female. So this we are creating the first bar here, and it will take the width of the bar. I like to take the width of the bar as 0.4. let's take 0.4 here. Now similar to this graph, I will create the same one for female, but there will be some changes, just like other graphs. I'll name it as P2, and instead of M data it will be F data. Another thing that I like to mention is the bottom. This is another argument, and that is M data. Now this is another argument that our graph took. Now I'll have to mention some other things as well in order to make the graph look better. So that will be xtext, plt.xtext, and it will take np.arange. There are 2 bar graphs, so there will be 2 ticks. I copy and pasted it here, and one will be, the first one was for men and the second one is for women. Now another thing, there will be a legend. You will come to know after I execute this part. plt.legend. P1 0, P2 0, and died and survived. Now just like other graphs, I mentioned the title will be men versus women survival, and okay, that's it. Now I'll just do plot.show, and I'll execute this part of code and see how the graph looks like. Okay, another error. There will be a small spelling mistake, I am sure. Female died instead of female died. It is female dead. I'll execute this part of code once again. So as you can see, we get a good graph here. So this is looking slightly smaller. I'll add the figure size here as well. There's a shortcut. If in the beginning itself we can mention the figure size, I'll take that part in the next tutorial. Instead of again and again mentioning the figure size, we can write just one line of code which makes all the figure look bigger. Now I'll execute this part of code and the size increased. And as you can see, this is the P1 part. The P1 part of the code is this part, the men, and the P2 part is the women. Here the xtext are the men that I mentioned here, and women, these are the xtext, and this is the label, not label but legend here. You can see I mentioned died here and survived. So I hope this video has been has gotten too long, so I hope you liked the video. Please click on the like button and subscribe to my channel. Thanks a lot for watching. I'll see you in the next video.